and we have met with some independent experts. And we've reviewed information that's available on the internet that relates to the site as a whole, that we start to build our site conceptual model, I suppose, would be the way of looking at it. And also we've followed the STADIMET design process. So over the next 40 minutes, we're going to present our findings from looking at the broader patterns and drilling down into individual designs, which we present shortly. Okay, this is a bit dry. It's all about the weather and the site model. The site is some 350 acres, 120 acres of which are bound by this line. There are some key features within the site. There's the recycling facility, polytunnel, the allotments, the barn, the dairy, a workshop, an improved area of pasture, a significant number of edges, biodiversity. There's a spring and some other nice features, the poultry, crops. There's some major roads, and there's some historical routes, this being the quarry, the line fed the quarry, the plant bearers that carried the slate away. In terms of prevailing wind direction, it's mainly from the south to southwest. Days of snow on the ground, 0 to 5 days. Ground frost, 60 to 80 days. Rainfall in January, 120 to 140 mil. In August, 80 to 120. So not a great deal of variation, surprisingly, between the middle of the winter and the middle of the summer. Average temperatures in January, 5 to 7.5 degrees. And August, 15 to 16. So it's very much based on the locality, being very coastal rather than back up into the mountains. And then the stuff of life, the soil, generally absent in the high ground, so straight onto bedrock. As we move further south, there are areas of clay, which I'll talk about later because it'll help in bringing all together the other proposals we have in terms of cob buildings. And there are areas of sand and gravel. In terms of the below ground information, is the Moelyci landfill, which accepted all sorts of waste up until about 1988. And I think it's kind of related to an area, if you look at the old Ordnance Survey maps, an area of excavation that's probably been infilled to carry the new cycle route. There's the railway line, but also there is a sheep dip around in this area as well. So those are some sort of key features that we need to be aware of. In terms of the past land use, as I said, it's been inhabited for about 2,000 years. It was part of the Penryn estate, the slate rail line, the farm buildings date from about 1800 and the current farmhouse from about 1850. It's been primarily sheep farming, and so there's no intensification of agriculture, and this has led to a multitude of habitats and edges within the site. I'm going to put on what we think are the sectors. Bear with me. Ah, and so it is. Good. I'll just put another one over here actually. So when we've looked at the topography of the site, it's primarily north facing, but there are a number of south facing slopes. in addition to which they do tend to pick up the sort of sunshine areas, and they also have very good views. So these are key sort of areas that we want to develop later, and we'll talk about that in our designs. And these are the main flow lines on and off the site.
So there's water.
In terms of people, people,
Okay.
yeah, people, transport, yeah, energy, near 55. One of the limiting factors that comes up is the presence of water on the site, and I'll just briefly drill down in that, if you excuse the bad joke. Okay, so this is, I'm talking about the rainfall patterns, and you can see, because of our location relative to the hills, that's the main governing factor, and also in the summer. If you look, I was trying to, maybe I can't really expand this, but that's Moelyci just there, and there's a surface water stream that enters on the eastern boundary and then turns 90 degrees and runs at the base of the allotments and then goes off site. This is where the Environment Agency determined might be at flood, which is across the Bethesda, and there's no area of flooding within the area of Moelyci's site. The water just comes straight off the mountain and off. I spoke earlier about the upland areas not having any soils, and you can see that, and that's been mapped by the British Geological Survey. So any water running on to this, because of the fractured nature of the rock, will just go straight down and lost. Then we have an area as you move towards the road of clay, and then we have in the rivers an area of sand and gravel. It is possible that some of the rock or some of the soils underlying the site could be excavated, and you might find a shallow groundwater zone that you could utilise. We'll just have to look more closely at where we can find that. But there is the possibility of that on site. And this is information that's given to farmers by the Environment Agency, and this map shows that this area has an excess of phosphate on the land, and it drains to a sensitive watercourse. And I imagine that's because of the farming that's been going on historically, and that being sheep farming and the use of organophosphate pesticides in the sheep dips. There is one on site, and so as we move forward in our designs, we might want to think about the use of phosphates when we have septic tanks and soakaways, so we're actually improving the land while we use it, so we don't want to use phosphates in our washing up liquid. And also, if we can have a look at going to the sheep dip area, and if we can plant anything in that area that's deep rooting, that can start to draw up some of that organic contamination, so that when we leave, or in 5 years' time, we've improved, our little bit. Yes, there's another slide. In speaking to Steve, one of his fundamental principles was that of the permaculture is people care, earth care, and fair share. And where these three principles meet is the Permaculture Centre, and from that we've identified a series of functions that can be derived from the objective of the Permaculture Centre. And these are permaculture research, permaculture education, volunteer opportunities and internships, For some reason I wrote it upside down. Enterprise development, so attracting in enterprise companies to the area, into the site. Meet the rent payments and overheads that we mentioned. Community involvement, long-term projects. Create a model that can be expanded out from the academy, so that other academies can start to bubble up in Wales and England. The growth of Sector 39 and the support that has from Kev, and so that everybody develops, and Sue, Kev and Richie, and also to meet Cwmharry's larger objectives. So these have been identified as the key functions that will arise from getting the Permaculture Academy established, while meeting core principles of the client, earth care, fuel care and fair share. Dom's going to come up and present the overall pattern of how we can Dom's going to present the overall pattern, and then present the overall pattern of how the functions and the elements all come together, and then we go on into the designs.
So this symbol sort of shows how we've been thinking about everything. Starting here, where we've been learning, and the energy of the thoughts kind of spreading out, our ideas spreading out from here. So it's kind of a functions map, so all the things we've realised that we need to function as a training academy. So food, kitchen, a space for facilitators and tutors, camping, community involvement, and we've sort of included the ethics as well, earth care, reaching out to the community, making connections, people care and fair share. And especially the courses and the training, making sure that we've got lots of demonstration activities, eco-dwellings and new ways of building, growing food, living in our immediate vicinity, taking from our immediate vicinity, so that's sort of an idea. You're welcome to come up and have a look, because maybe lots of things I haven't said. So spaces for socialising and everything. So we're kind of establishing what the functions are, and then thinking about limitations that we've had. So things like money, capital, manpower, the environment, seasonal, thinking about can we do it in the winter, weather conditions, and time. So we're thinking there could be some things which we can do initially, which are easy to do, and then other things which will slowly progress the more revenue that comes, and the more people that are involved. So the more people, over time. So it's going to be a progressive development with each course. Starting with the immediate things we can change. We started in here, thinking about this room. It's been a great resource, a great classroom, and maybe thinking along the lines of, this building being, having the same kind of function. So I'll hand over now and talk about this building.
Okay. So, starting on year one, we've got the resources that we've got here already. So we have this room, the potential of using that room for storage. It's waterproof, the roof is watertight in there. We have toilets, and we've popped up a kitchen. And so year one, we're up and running, really. We've got the basic facilities. And the simple things that we could do without much money and a bit of incentive, and those are to just make the place a little bit more welcoming. As you're coming up through the gate, it's just not very exciting. We don't know, like Marion, she didn't know where to go, what to do, you know, it was like, you can get very lost if you don't know what you're doing. And just with a simple, this potentially, just a slow sign, to keep the gate, if there is activities going on up here, then we need to make people aware of that, and so in the first year we've been looking at the housing, the potential. So in the first year maybe we could just improve this house here and make it the welcoming information centre. So we can kind of, it does need a bit of slating, but I'm sure there's enough skills amongst us to kind of make that waterproof. And then we've talked a little about wild camping, which can be very profitable and not a lot of input. So, and as an information centre for delegating people off to the right places where they need to, you know, find out where they're going. And so, bearing that in mind, that might be quite an easy step to take for the first year, and then we've got our starting point. It seems the most obvious because it is the one that you see as you come up the drive. So make that a bit more cheerful, and then we're into the yard here, and then Mick, I believe his name is, he's got his workshop, that seems to work well for him, he's got space there, and then of course we've got this facility which we've already talked about, and doesn't need much work for the next, yeah, well, it's up and running, but we do have an upper story there which, you know, we might be able to fit into a 5-year programme. But having said that, you know, the potential is that with just a little bit of tweaking, we can make it look like that. And that isn't taking anything away from anywhere, really. We can use wild plants, we can use anything, you know, just a bit of honeysuckle, a couple of roses, a few pots, just to make the basic appearance, you know, first sight of the place. We can cheer it up a bit with hardly any resources, and, you know, work on it on a 5-year programme. This becoming a much more resource-based, you know, we can use it with our resources, storage and stuff like that, and maybe convert upstairs where we can have network, internet and all that kind of stuff, and maybe even a little room or something up there, because there's enough space up there for 2 rooms at least. So, with the permaculture facilities, you know, and with the academy, that would be definitely something that we could invest time in. You know, it's a lovely picture. Yeah, and you know, it didn't take much to kind of see that. It's just like it's already there. Just needs the plants need to be planted and make it all more better for the academy, and of course this facility, hopefully over the winter, you know, be used by the community and made much better use of, really. So that's me. So that makes the whole place a bit more welcoming. It makes it look like it is being used, that it has a, you know, has a purpose.
Mine's a bit colourful. So, from here, obviously we've got the classroom. bathroom, and we've just got a pop-up little kitchen there. But one of the other main parts of our remit was to think about, or certainly something that we had to think about during our remit, was possible income streams for the place. So we've talked about, the wood workshop and obviously course fees and things like that, and lots of demonstrations. And I know we all know that there's lots of businesses involved and interested in finding their own little space here. But I think one of the first and possibly one of the most lucrative could be via selling food in whatever sense that might mean. So pickles and jams and making beer and wine and all of those different things, but also a pop-up restaurant has been mentioned, or maybe a slightly more permanent restaurant. There was talk of that room in there being a kitchen, but I think what Mon suggested for that building does make more sense to me, and there's no reason why we couldn't have a kitchen exactly where it is. Just take it out a little bit further towards this amphitheatre and herb garden, which is there now. This doesn't look like a kitchen because it's got a green roof, a couple of yoga spots and a little bench and whatever. I'll put a telescope there because the sky at night here is absolutely incredible, and it would be a great place to look at it from. But that could be, just a nice feature, and it's just an example of what's possible within permaculture and within Richie's skill base. So I think personally that would work really well. The kitchen could be there. There's So basically this is a really technical drawing. We've basically kept the kitchen exactly the same as it is. If we walk out this door, we walk out the door here, this door. So the cooker is currently here, but if we put a wide one there, if we put a double oven there, create a bit more worktop space there and a table here, slate the floor with materials that we find around the fridge here, with a little bit of cold, dry food storage in there, you could have more than enough room to do cooking demonstrations and whatever, and also provide for food for the staff, course members, volunteers, whoever else. So to be able to provide that food, we need a massive food garden. This is also a perfect opportunity, this field out here, to just show off a few different techniques of permaculture. I've just chucked things in. Obviously the finer details could change, that might not be the rhubarb bed. I know you can all tell it's rhubarb. So we're thinking as we walk out here, you walk up the steps, which we'd have to put in just next to that giant rock, a few steps just to guide this, which will eventually lead round to where Carmen's going to talk about the campsite in a minute, and also a footpath here, some soft berries and stuff. Leave the fence where it is, because this is sort of zone 4, which is a forest garden, which Mark's going to talk about in a minute. But as we've made a natural footpath here, examples of hugel beds. I thought of possibly a little wildlife pocket here with a frog pond and whatever. Block the chickens and the geese that live here off with that. Little greenhouse. We've got the problem of a septic tank here and stuff. I thought maybe just planting a comfrey bed around that and just leave that to be what it is. Greenhouse here, and obviously, like Mark said, there is actually a lot of rainfall on Moelyci, but where is all the water? So there's countless numbers of slate roofs here that aren't collecting any. So at every point, at the corner of every roof of any sort, there should be a water butt, in my opinion. So collect a big one here, straight off the corner of this building. But a little idea that I had maybe was, if this is a greenhouse, obviously with your tomatoes and chilies and whatnot, as the water rains onto there, it gravity feeds into an aquaponics tank, which then has a solar pump, pumps it into a slightly tilted, raised, soft herb bed that runs through gravel, and gravity feeds back into the aquaponics tank, so that shouldn't need too much topping up and whatever. Surprising amount of land here. If you've made these sort of 1.2 metres wide, as Steve suggested raised beds should be, just in the greenhouse and those 3 beds there is about 75 square metres of planting ground. this isn't quite to scale. These are the rather than the raised bed. We could actually get a lot more of these in this area than I've drawn on there, but that's just as a rough idea. A couple of picnic tables for sitting out in the lunch. Thought about just one example of an apple tree, that we might have lots of different breeds of apple in there, but have a bit of a go at grafting all the different breeds onto the one tree, and it's sort of the first thing you see as you walk up this courtyard and towards the path and whatever. You go bang, look at that, there's loads of those. And hops and grapevines going over a terrace along that pathway that leads along the side of the toilet building. And then obviously, you know, the huge amount of compost that we're going to need. You know, take stuff straight out the back of the chickens and the geese shed straight into the compost, be able to move that around. There's lots of other ideas. I thought maybe here, don't know how it would work, but build cob benches, and at the end of them you have a rocket stove. So it's sort of a thermal mass bench, so in the cold days you boil your cup of tea on there and it warms your seat. So you can have sort of 4 or 5 people sitting on each of those, and it's just another example of a permaculture thing. So then, yeah, that's basically that really. Richie's also going to have to build us a nice arched wooden bridge here, so he's going to be busy. And I thought maybe you could do a couple of yoga spots on top of the little meadow that's on the kitchen roof.
It's an outside classroom, isn't it?
It's an outside classroom, exactly. So that's those possibilities really. And then we walk out here, which, you know, potentially in the future I suppose this field could be used, or we could steal a bit more of it or whatever, but for the moment all we've talked about is just using the edges that aren't mown at the moment. So Mark's had a little bit of a think about forest gardens, which you might talk about.
Should have a piece of paper somewhere. Oh, thanks. So trying to link the inside, the outside classroom, and with the area where people will be staying, which Carl will talk about later. There's a developed pasture to the side, but it also has a large boulder in it, and as a result they're not able to cut the grass right away to the perimeter of the fence, and this has been left just to run wild. So in order to link the outside education area with the other parts of the training facility, we have this garden, this fruit forest then really. We have fruit farm, I should say, sorry, across the side there, with at least 4 or 5 varieties of soft fruit that we can take cuttings from, and we could plant those. There's no cost involved with that other than time and teaching. There's also an orchard with a number of varieties of apples. We could take graftings from them, we could plant those as well. Another learning opportunity. We could take blackberry cuttings and just encourage the processes of natural succession outwards into this area. The fence line will maintain the presence of the soft fruits, hopefully bring the birds in, seeds, and then just push that succession process out right to the edges of the pasture. And maybe slowly playing the pasture fields by stealth. And possibly a beehive on this south-facing slope, which is protected on the back from any other areas by a low hedge, and it's just outside the area to walk back to.
It's quite good how this is kind of matched up to here, because we really love this idea of having a wee forest garden that comes and links all the elements of where people are, from the learning to the camping. And people think camping in the pasture, and it's not always available. So we had a look around, and we really like the little spot, that side of the trees up there. It's level, and it seems really good as an alternative camping spot. We've got a sort of basic map. So you can see that's that shows that's what it's like at the moment. So that's also being used for grazing, and it's partitioned off a bit at the moment. So it would take a bit of coordination to make sure everyone's happy with where the animals are and where people are camping. So we're thinking the camping here. It'd be really nice to have a cob house or roundhouse for people to come in the evenings, a bit like the teepee. I'm just walking around up there, and there's a bit of there's quite a ditch, and I just instantly thought compost toilet. So Steve thinks that's a viable idea as well. It would work there, a bit away from the fence. Haven't drawn it on, but we would like to put a lot more planting along here as well. We'd sort of disguise it a bit, but an edible, to create a sort of edible pathway. I could talk about all this more, but I'd love to take you outside if we've got time. So yeah, the compost toilet, the camping, dwellings, cob house, and then at the back behind here, I think we talked about it before, in fact putting for facilitators and a tutor. They're sort of zone 1, and it would be fairly easy to do that probably immediately, I'd imagine, just with a platform and the skills and the resources that we already have. So that's an immediate. And then obviously these would be, like we say, part of training, learning, permacultural skills, building skills. So if we come back to the building we're in, and we come out, we've then got the house to think about as well. So, Marion.
So the house is one big waste we can have here, because it's a very big house with a lot of possibility. But when we see like how it is now, it looks abandoned.
Yeah.
And we have to put life on it. And one way to put life on it could be an hostel. It don't need a lot of investment. Sorry. Thank you. A lot of investment. We just need I know you can learn English. We just need some bunny bed and some locker to put on the 4 rooms on the first floor. We already have a shower, a bathroom, a toilet, and we can just have to change the first floor, the ground floor, in dining room and living room, because the kitchen is already here. It's a good way to improve people around the world, to visit Moelyci, to speak with people working here, who make students in the PDC, and it's good advertising. Promotion, thank you. And when courses are here, we can use this house and maybe 1 or 2 rooms, it depends number of students, like emergency room, because during 2 weeks we have an amazing weather, but visibly it's not already like that. And if it's raining too much, people can't stay in the campsite. They have to find a way to be in a warm place and not in the rain. So it could be a good way to use this house all the time as an hostel and as an emergency house. I would like to say something else, and now I don't remember. Yes. And behind this house there is actually wide garden. It needs a lot of work, but we can make it a small sample. An example, and the small ones.
Yes, a phase of small gardens.
Of what we can do with the permaculture garden. Not but just for sure when people when sleep maybe 1-2 nights to see what's happened here in a bigger form, in a bigger place.
Yes.
And when we leave Moelyci, or at least the yard, we see the red bird. Oh, sorry, I forget something. This house a very big wall, and we can make and already have in the dining room that we can turn in the living room. We can put the
Thermal mass stove.
thermal stove for warming the house and make an example how we can use it. And when we leave Moelyci, actually, or at least the spot, we see that it's beautiful, right? But it's a little bit destroyed. Need a lot of work, at least for finish walls. And if we finish it's a lot of work yet, but it's not a long work in the time. That can be due in maybe a few weeks. And we can do something better. We can split in different places. One for biochar, one for store wood and wood, and the rest can be used for parking caravan. And I learned this morning that in long-term plan of this spot, it's about creating, actually between the stair of this building and this spot there is a slope, and we can turn this slope an auditorium for making events in the empty place and place for market. Like that, we keep the place for the red in the red zone, the 4 place in the red zone, and we add another function for the empty place. Someone want to conclude?
Okay, so thank you so much for listening to us. A few things I've got to say. So we're sort of joining a lot of the aspects together with Forest Garden, but also we'd like to kind of look a little bit at footpaths and how we can sort of link getting to this other campsite in different ways. So we can come out and we can climb up here, maybe adjust, put a few stones in to make the steps easier, and then come up this way. And there's a fence at the moment, but we've sort of been climbing over the fence, and it's quite, it's quite an easy route up to the camping field. And there's also, if you just go through this gate here, past the laundry room, and then behind that, if you go right, there's another gate, so another sort of quick entrance. And then I really like the walk. You can't really see but the walk that sort of starts here, so you come out of here and it's directly there, the path that follows up, and it's really nice because it sort of curves in to the camping field, and the path sort of stops, but you get the sense that it kind of still goes in, and you've got this lovely, almost like a spiral. So I really like that, and it brings you out here. And if we've got time, maybe people would like to just walk up there and have a little breather and imagine, what we could do up there. Imagine like a nice structure that we could do with students, and any other ideas anyone has for this space. And any questions, or should we do questions first?
We'll allow you 6 minutes for a field trip to go and have a look at it, and then head you back down again, and then you've got 10 minutes, 5 minutes of questions and 5 minutes of feedback.
Okay.
So if you want to do
So
that in
everyone
6
wants
minutes.
to stretch our legs and just imagine then we can even come back. If everyone's up for it, we could come back this way. Do a little circular.
Any hillside. or know what I have to say.
Oh, that's good. We know what you're going to say. Really well, yeah.
We're back where we started.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Let's just whiz those things in.
Yeah. Okay, so you don't get any questions because you have them when we were walking around. Because I have to.
3 o'clock now.
At the time, it's 5, 6 minutes to. We have 6 minutes left to.
Speak up, Tom.
I try and keep my momentum going because yeah, try not to lose our ability to see different. So thank you very much. Team 2, fantastic presentation. That was so. Yeah, let's see what we do. That was so rich with ideas and so beautifully imagined and described. I like the way both the first and second presentations led us into the site and kind of informed us about what's going on, made us fall in love with it with all these beautiful rocks and crannies and interesting little buildings and things. And you're starting to create the nooks and crannies, the habitats we need for the functions that we've identified to be able to happen. Really strong points about your design is I like the structure, the way you went through your survey, and really thorough land survey and the sort of broader zone 5 locations in the landscape. That was very valuable, really, really interesting. I felt like I learned a lot from that. And I think it helped. Moelyci is a big, complicated site, and I think to try and get that overview, absolutely, really, really good. And to have Ian's perspective, your kind of environment agency, kind of, sort of perspective on that was like really, really fantastic and interesting. So yes, you took to the geological side more for all of that, and I think that's really set the scene. I really like the functions analysis, and also I like the way that you looked at the flower and laid over the ethics over the permaculture flower and sort of saw how those interact. And how really, by bringing those aspirations together, and what the energy that the academy and all the processes around that can offer, actually gives a mechanism which we can deliver that much of what you've imagined. Now, all of that we need to bring people onto the site, so we've seen a really interesting development of that idea. Then we also started to create habitats, and then also to support those functions by putting in those key elements. So, I think the kitchen idea and the extent of that is really bold. I think it's really creative. I love the flat roof. I love the idea that we can actually create a teaching space at the top of it. We can actually replicate some habitat. We've all noticed how the setting sun shines right in there. That's just priceless. That's a hell of a location. And I think that having a flourishing on-site community, which is what you talked about, is it's all got to be about food and that range of different spaces. So I really like the way you looked at the house, Marianne, and I like to see that potential of how we can make it as easy as possible to come and stay, and as you so rightly said, is without really having to spend very much access to new resources. Pretty much we can do that with what's lying around already. We can find most of those things in small amounts of money. and that gives us the energy and for people to do it. I mean, also the laundry idea, having that welcoming spot, sort of a hub for people to somewhere to aim to. Not the people who arrive at the bottom, they stay at the bottom, you know, the people who interact with it on a I'm just going past having a sandwich kind of way. Then there's another kind of level of interaction, isn't there, about people coming onto the site and being volunteers, course participants, long-term, you know, residents, so if they need somewhere to go, we need to be able to support that by having laundries at a safe place, notice board, all of those.
Just like that, sort of turning it back into an outside sink as well, doing
Yeah.
extra flowers, you know, if you've got the message board behind the welly wash place and people are just
And you think about,
interacting.
we've got some interesting, so we've got the sort of Zone 1 space as the course hub, we've got the Zone 1 space as the on-site community hub or the house function or whatever is going on there. And then this space in between it is all that Zone 2. It's much easier to share Zone 2 spaces so we can place things like laundries and notice boards and meeting rooms.
And with the auditorium, or with the idea that we take this wall out here and then we just open the space up.
Brilliant.
It's just like, so that no...
From here looking down to so that vision that you gave us there with as you said, that kind of auditorium view,
and mixed it with events and businesses that are here.
I like the idea of the marketplace within the old cafe yard there.
Honestly, that presentation was so rich in ideas, I'm struggling to sort of
I know,
digest.
so
I actually, have indigestion now. Indigestion of the imagination. But the two designs we've seen so far spoke to each other beautifully and actually gave us a coherence.
I was really pleased with the there, so I thought this is going to lead really nicely into what we're going to say.
Like touching on coming up a
We're all
bit
on the
more.
same sort of page.
And I think it's that coherence of vision and understanding of functionality, not just, kitchen, how do we feed people here as a function? So to think about that, think about short, medium, long term residents. So you're starting to put all of that infrastructure in place, you put it in the big picture, you take it down to the small picture, you've given a vision of really exciting potentials which wouldn't take enormous investment at all, and things that within the skill set that we've been experiencing over the last 2 weeks. We've got the phone numbers of people who can do that stuff and doing it ourselves. So with the time rushing by, I'm just going to stop feeding back there, but I'm speechless, honestly. It was a fantastic design, a really, really coherent presentation. I think it's another round of applause. So, how about 10 minutes? 10 minutes to shuffle papers, is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, well, it's over. What a good question.
It was alright, it was more of a financial look at it. I couldn't quite work out how you budgeted. So you had £1,000 within your budget.
No, £1,000 is the overheads for
That's
the
an expense.
academy.
An expense.
Right. I was just wondering when there's an £8,000 mortgage, how that, when you use up all the buildings, how that
No, this building is for academy. This is for
The
use
function
of
of
it.
education,
It's the
yeah.
function room, so it's not
You
just
can hire it out
here. It's
to
hired out to
social groups
whoever wants it. The
And that's
facilities are shared.
having use of that room there. If you've got any pregnant women that want to lie on the floor, but we've got to have a meeting or like do some drawing, you go in there and do it. There, resources in there, and
I didn't see it as just Permaculture Academy. I saw it as what you described perfectly seems to like a hostel,
All the functions that
it's all about keeping livestock.
it's
army
making-
work.
it makes everything more available. If you've got the
Flow stuff,
facilities.
skincare, education, moving people around safely, it
Yeah.
addresses all of those. It gives us a total multifunctionality how we do it. And all of the things that we propose there, none of them cost very much money. Every time I run a course, I write the budget based on how many people on it. And if I have more people on it, we have a bigger budget to spend and we do bigger projects. So a lot of these things actually can get built within the momentum of
Yeah,
kind
so
of
it's got a big
courses,
asset
training.
progress of development, and we didn't do a year 1, year 2, year 3 thing, but we thought we'd kind of mention it as we went along. In starting with things we know we can do, putting that out
like the
there.
wild camping, but that's not particularly for the academy. That is to bring a funding, an income quality while camping.
We just look. This is great. This is stimulating debate, but we just don't have time to carry on. It's not fair on team three.
It's 5
presentation.
hours.
You now have 7.5 minutes to prepare, so we'll start at 10 past. Alright, yeah, they're all on. And the slides there. Go back. Well, yeah, they're on. Steve will have them on his.
Have you brought them over? Have you? Have I got them? I'll put
Got
them
them all on there.
There we go.
So they're all on present.